وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي، أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning, Michigan. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues.
I am Atef Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Good day, everybody. In our discussion today, the Gaza War, despite its violence, presents a unique opportunity for the U.S. to establish peace in the Middle East through the two-state solution. However, Israel rejects most of the American ideas submitted so far, and that issue has strained their relationship, leading to protests across American society and Congress in an election year. In the next hour, we will explore the implications of the Gaza War for the U.S.-Israel relationship, for regional peace, and for the upcoming presidential election. To help us with the discussion, we have two distinguished guests and experts. Dr. Edmund Ghareeb, who is an expert on American and Arab affairs, and Mr. Ray Hanania, who is an award-winning journalist and reporter and special correspondent for the newspaper, The Arab News. Before we get started, a program note. We are coming to you not just on radio, but also on Zoom. You go to the Facebook page of U.S. Arab Radio, and you will find us there on the link. My first question will go to my two guests. And let's start with Mr. Ghareeb, Dr. Ghareeb. The State Department is said to be working on proposals to recognize a Palestinian state. What would you suggest to Antony Blinken if you are asked to give your advice?
Thank you, Atef. It's a pleasure to be with you and with Ray, and thank you for the invite. It's clear that the administration right now is finding itself in a very difficult position. It's facing pressure both internally and externally. Worldwide, we have seen that there had been changes taking place in public opinion. In the beginning, after the October 7 attack, we saw that many countries actually sympathized with the Israelis, and especially as the stories of atrocities, as it was described at that time, taking place about the killing of children, cutting their heads off, raping women, etc., But I think over the past a couple of months, we have seen changes, dramatic changes begin to take place, and that has to do with what has been going on in Gaza, the horrifying picture coming out of Gaza. Basically have changed the attitudes of many, even in the Western Europe, as well as in the United States, where people began to see what was going on, and that began to affect their points of view. I mean, the killing of innocent people, the fact that we're hearing from that members of Congress of the United States are describing, saying that there are no innocents in Gaza. This is beginning to put pressure on the administration. The administration has become isolated, somewhat isolated internationally. And then we have seen the decision of the International Court of Justice. All of these have began to put pressure on the U.S. government. And is, of course, the domestic angle of it. That's why I think we're beginning to hear some views that we haven't heard for quite a while. We have seen the return to talking about the idea of the two-state solution, although the United States governments, the administrations, in fact, that have not done very much, especially under the last two administrations, under the current administration and the Trump administration. But I believe that the changes that I've, at least, and we can talk a little bit more in detail about it later, I think these are some of the factors which have contributed to the decision of the Secretary of State. And whatever the reasons, I think this is an important development because for the first time in a long time, we're beginning to hear the talk of the need for two-state solutions and that Israel cannot continue to settle as several Israeli leaders, like people like Ben Gvir, like Smotrich, have called in the last couple of days. There was a conference in which they wanted to settle and what they describe in the Gaza, as well as in what they describe as Judea and Samaria, and basically that's the West Bank. And the map that the Prime Minister Netanyahu showed when he was at the United Nations showed that they actually had, ambitions to have to control areas that go much beyond the West Bank and Gaza, and so as a result of this, I think we are beginning to see some of these changes, and I think the administration has begun to talk. That's where we have heard about the request that was made by Secretary Blinken with the awareness and the support of the White House to discuss the idea of a new settlement based on the two-state solution, where the West Bank and Gaza would be under basically Palestinian state, under Palestinian control, and a rejection of the position of the settlers and the leaders of the settlers in Israel and hardline Zionists. At the same time, they said that they also would like to offer security guarantees to Israel, and that may include we haven't seen the details about this, include that the Palestinian state would be somewhat disarmed, would not have heavy weapons, etc. That in itself raises questions also about what kind of a state would emerge. But at least this is a significant change, and we'll see whether this is really an attempt right now to influence the U.S. politics and the coming election, or is it genuine? And we'll have to wait and see, because we've heard similar things before. But in fact, instead of supporting that peace plan that we heard a great deal about and that the world community demanded, we have seen, in fact, support for Israel, for its policies, and for its continued expansionist activities in the West Bank.
Ray, the same question for you. I may add also that the report we are discussing says that the U.S. is looking into options to recognize the Palestinian state and also to have arrangements for an international recognition of the new state. Go ahead.
Well, I think what the problem is that Biden is under pressure currently because of his election is coming up this year. I'm not talking just about, we have primary elections all over the country. The abandoned Biden campaign has, as a result of his and Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State's failure to represent the humanitarian and human rights needs of Palestinians in the face of this horrific Israeli assault, Biden is in trouble, and he may not get reelected. And it's not just a matter of Arabs, it's also Arabs in this abandoned Biden campaign in key states that are, that have heavy Arab and Muslim votes, where Biden only won the states by maybe 10, 20,000 votes. And there are about 6 states like that where Arab votes and Muslim votes can prevent Biden from winning. So what Biden is doing now, he's in a desperate move to try to save face with Arabs and Muslims after honestly giving Israel 4 months of carte blanche to murder and massacre as many people in the Gaza Strip as possible. I mean, we're talking about over 30,000. We don't even know what the accurate numbers are because nobody is paying attention to the number of Palestinians being killed. All they're doing is paying attention to Israeli government press releases. The media here runs the Israeli press releases verbatim. But every time a Palestinian agency tries to assert something, it's taken with a grain of salt, it's questioned. So there's a serious problem. Biden is responsible for allowing this to happen. Biden and Anthony Blinken, especially the Secretary of State, who has acted more like a Secretary of State for Israel than he has for the United States. We're in a mess, and Biden knows it. And now Biden is in re-election mode, and he's going to say and do anything. This idea out of the blue that he pulled out of a hat that maybe the U.S. will recognize a Palestinian state, that is meaningless. It may sound, on any other time, it would have sounded significant, but today it's meaningless. It's purely for political reasons. It doesn't have the backing of any of the members of the Senate or Congress. He could say whatever he wants, but it'll have absolutely no impact on changing the daily lives of Palestinians, not just in the Gaza, but under occupation in the West Bank. And that also has gotten bad as a result of this. There is no leadership from the United States. Biden is not an effective president. Anthony Blinken, I think, has been running our foreign policy on his own, and he's taken it to the extreme, seriously representing the Israelis. So whatever Biden says now, I think it's purely a desperate political move to save his administration, not to resolve a serious problem that should have been addressed 4 months ago. And by the way, I am not in any way defending and I know that none of us are, what Hamas did on October 7th. That's horrific. And there was no justification for it by an organization that's not a government. They had no right to do that. But at the same time, Israel, prior to October 7th, had killed 230 Palestinians in 2024 this year. And in the prior year, it killed 400 Palestinians in 2023. So there's been a massacre taking place, not just by the Hamas, but also by the Israeli government.
Well, I'm glad you talked about October 7th, because that would be my next question for Dr. Ghareeb, but we will go and take a quick break. So, Mr. Ghareeb, get ready for that question when we come back.
The trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New concept products and design. New location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood 734-744-9796.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bottom, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
I am Atef Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to our discussion on Radio Baladi, and we are talking about Gaza war and how it causing cracks in the U.S.-Israel relationship. My next question goes to Dr. Ghareeb. The U.S. says Israel has the right to self-defense, responding to the 7th of October attack, as if history started on that day. And as Ray just said, we don't condone violence against any civilian, any party. But what would you say to the U.S. and to Israel?
Well, clearly what we know is, and what we have been witnessing over the years, is that Israel has pursued a policy of remember what has been going on in Gaza. Every 2-3 years, every 4 or 5 years, we see what was described as mowing the lawn. That means that Israel would go in and kill a number of Palestinians. And we've seen this time and time again. I mean, just think of the idea of the use of the terminology, mowing the lawn, which means basically that the grass is growing, and so therefore we must cut it off. We must, so basically, but you're applying this to human beings, and the U.S. government had continued to protect Israel, to support Israel in international fora, and to defend Israel, although Israel is an occupation of Gaza, and Gaza is actually controlled. The air, the sea, and most of the land are controlled by Israel. The borders of Gaza are controlled by land borders, except for the part next to Egypt. You have the air is controlled by Israel, and the sea is controlled by Israel. So basically, Israel is under occupation. It has been described even by some Israeli historians have described it as a large concentration camp. And basically, it's at open air prison. So the Palestinians have been living in Gaza under very, very difficult circumstances. And international law says that Israel has responsibilities towards the Palestinians, towards the people under occupation. But Israel has been violating those laws, and that's why I think when you talk about and you hear from the administration, Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel is an occupying power, and as an occupying power, it does not have it ought to be protecting the Palestinians, in fact, instead of attacking them. What we have seen over the past couple of months at least is that Israeli soldiers have launched one of the heaviest bombing campaigns, and the Israelis have been using 2,000-pound bombs that have been supplied by the United States, as well as providing other weapons and equipment. And this is similar, in fact, to what we saw. I remember I wrote an article in the early 73 about the U.S. Providing a bridge to carry weapons when Israel appeared to be losing the battle against the Egyptians and the Syrians in the 1973 war at that time. And a bridge was established to provide weapons and military equipment and aid to Israel very close to the battlefronts, and which helped contribute to changing the results of that war. But what we have seen recently is that we've seen already something like at least I think Ray was mentioning, referring to this. We don't know the exact figure, but according to some of the people in Gaza and some of the international organizations, human rights organizations, there are already about close to 27,000 people who have died. And that includes more than 17,000 women and children. Far more than half of all the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed or damaged. There have been reports of, even in Western and some Western publications, basically The Guardian recently has reported about Israel's systematic destruction of the Strip, basically, which is amounting in reality to making Gaza an uninhabitable area, which is perhaps what the main purpose behind this is, to force the population of Gaza to leave their homes, to leave their land. And that in itself is a war crime. And we've seen, of course, the decisions that have been of the International Court of Justice. And that's partly also one of the reasons why we may have seen some pressure a little bit on the administration. But the position of the administration is somewhat perplexing. At the same time, the last couple of days, we've heard about sanctions imposed on 4 settlers in the West Bank who have committed acts of violence against Palestinians, who have tried to force the Palestinians out of their home and taking over their property. But there have been already hundreds of Palestinians who have been killed in the West Bank also, and maybe about 400 killed, maybe, or even a little more than that, and about 4,000 injured. All of this raises questions about the responsibility also of the administration. But it seems that right now we're beginning to hear sounds coming from the administration about punishing the settlers, putting sanctions on them for individuals. But we don't see any sanctions imposed on Israel, for example, for the violations of international human rights laws, and about what we're seeing as the mass destruction of Gaza. And as a result of this, I think this is what has led to what we are seeing, is that the rest of the world is moving away from the United States and some of Britain and some of the few countries that are continuing to support them. And instead, we saw the vote at the General Assembly of the United Nations, where 153 countries voted to condemn what was going on. And while only 10 countries supported Israel and the United States, including both the US and Israel.
Ray, you just heard Edmund describe the situation under which the Palestinians exist as a concentration camp. As we all know, the Jews suffered from abuse in Europe, the Holocaust, and etc. Yet Israel's leadership, at least, has excuses to justify their abuse of the Palestinians in Gaza and also in the West Bank. Explain to us, why is that?
Well, I don't like to make comparisons, between one thing or another, because it minimizes one, it minimizes the other. The Holocaust was a horrendous tragedy, executed by the Nazis. But in fairness to this idea that somehow the Arabs didn't stand up for the Jews during World War II, 15,000 Arab Americans served during World War II in the U.S. military, fought the Nazis, including my father and my uncle, to save the Jewish people and end the Holocaust and destroy Germany. But at the same time, I don't think that we should compare it to the Holocaust. I think this is a Holocaust taking place in Gaza, a separate entity, a separate war crime. I think that we should look at it in terms of what Israel is doing. Killing indiscriminately, this idea of collective punishment that, when a criminal blows up something in Chicago, they don't destroy an entire city to get to that criminal or that suspect. At least in the United States, we take somebody to court before we punish them. In Israel, they don't have that system. They just execute extrajudicial justice. Meaning that if someone says that Atef did something wrong, they can go and they could attack Atef. They could put you in jail. They could even kill you without ever going before a justice system. But the bigger problem is that the Arabs for a long time have no voice in the United States. We think we have a voice. We have breadcrumbs. We don't have the bread. We're happy with what we do. But we don't understand public relations. We don't understand messaging. We don't understand propaganda. We have one radio station, which is what we're on now, based in Detroit, and we have no access to the rest of the media. When we are on the media, we're brought on as guests who are to defend mostly negative things that are attributed to us in a stereotypical and racial way that Arabs have done, or Palestinians have done, or Muslims have done, things that no other community has to go through. We're the part of the problem in this country. The war is in Gaza, but the political battle is here in the United States. We're not doing a good job. The only thing I will say is that they started this abandoned Biden movement, and a lot of people are debating, well, if we get rid of Biden, we're going to end up with Trump. And my argument is there is no difference between Biden and Trump. They're both exactly the same. The only difference is that Biden in 4 months has done more damage, and more Palestinians and Arabs have been massacred and killed in 4 months than were killed when Trump was president for 4 years. So this isn't about Trump. It isn't about Biden. It is Arabs have to stand up and speak out against Biden, ensure that he's not reelected, so that we can say we make a difference in this country, that our vote matters, that we stop Biden, even if we have another guy who's crazy who takes over after him. But we need to make the point. If we surrender to Biden, then we've allowed and we've justified and we've embraced all of the terrible things that Biden has allowed to happen. And that's not to say that Trump would have been any better. But I'm just saying that we need to stand up and say no to this. And we need to continue to say no. But it's Arab and Muslim Americans that need to get together and empower themselves so that this doesn't happen again moving forward in the future.
When we come back after a short break, I'm going to ask Dr. Ghareeb about the fragmentation of Palestinians and how a Palestinian state can be established in light of that fact. After the break.
Ziyad brand, quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics, according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts at all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
As the weather gets colder, it's a good idea to layer up with scarves, hats, and mittens. Another layer of protection this season is to get your flu and COVID-19 vaccines. You can get both vaccines at the same time. Talk to your healthcare provider or learn more at michigan.gov/COVID-flu-RSV and layer up for some added peace of mind. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most. And make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
I am Atef Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the Gaza War and its implications on the U.S.-Israel relationship. Dr. Ghareeb, as you heard, Ray just talked about how Arabs in the U.S. are part of the problem. And I want to take that one step further. The Palestinians are fragmented into groups, into movements, into different goals and ideologies. So how can a Palestinian state be successful?
Before I respond to that, I'd like to respond a little bit to Ray. There was no diminishing of the importance of the Holocaust. In fact, it was Arabs who protected Jews in Morocco. The King of Morocco protected many Jews. We saw before that Arabs actually also when the Spaniards retook control of their country, but they did the way they did it. They expelled Arabs and Muslims and Jews with them. And where did they go? They went to the Islamic world. They went to the Ottoman Empire. They went to Egypt. And they were welcomed and by the population there. The description was used by an Israeli scholar, and it was also in terms of concentration, it means that it does not refer to the Holocaust, it refers to imprisonment and keeping people in prison, as we are seeing in Gaza. So I think that's a point that's, I think, important to realize what has been going on in Gaza and for a long time is that this is, as I mentioned, and this is my description, is that it is an open-air prison in many ways because the people of Gaza were not allowed to go in, to bring in, even sometimes food, certain kinds of food were not allowed to be brought in. And that raises questions, yeah, absolutely, about what's happening in there. At the same time, I think when it comes to your question about the need, there's no doubt that the divisions among the Palestinians between Hamas and Fatah and between the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas, and in fact, the Israelis played an important part where they tried to support one group against the other, and that allowed for the continuation of the differences, the conflict that's taken place so far. At the same time, also, I think it's important to see, Ray was absolutely right when he talked about the role of the Arab Americans. They could play a much more effective, much more important role, and he's absolutely right when it comes to the point of not being able to fully participate. Part of it, I think, has to do with the fact that you have not had the full integration, although many Arab Americans have played important roles in government. They have taken, basically, some of them were elected to the Senate, to the House, and they have played an important role in defending the Arab world, Arab causes, as well as because they saw this as to be also in America's interests and in America's best interest to try to achieve the goals that they believed America stands for: democracy, human rights, etc. But there has been also, on the other hand, part of the problem is that many Arab Americans also still, while they are, especially new immigrants, while they are living in the United States, in reality, they are still living in the Arab world. They follow more the news of what's going on in the Arab world than they follow the news of the United States. And I think there is a need to try to integrate, to build bridges with other communities. And in fact, the efforts that have been taking place over the recent years, to try to build bridges towards other communities has brought some results. We're seeing it now. In fact, we've seen, for example, over the past week, there were about over 1,000 Christian ministers of Black ministers in the United States who have expressed support for the Palestinians, who have come out, and they represent churches that have somewhere around 15 million African Americans, and they have said that President Biden has strayed basically from the true path, the best path, the moral path in a way, and that what's going on in Gaza is totally unacceptable. We've seen a decline in the support of the African American community. We've heard voices from many in the Latin American community, the Latinos in the United States, the Hispanic communities. We have seen, for the first time, I've seen Asian Americans in some of the demonstrations that have taken place. That's something very, very unusual. We've seen American Jews go down many of them had a sit-in Capitol Hill, and also we see them demonstrating in front of the White House and speaking out against what Israel has been doing, and they saying, not in our name. We've also seen, on top of that, I mean, this is why I think we're seeing the administration begin to talk about the idea of the two-state solution, the return to that idea. We've seen the journalists like Thomas Friedman who, whether we agree with some of his earlier writings or not, he has come out and said that the only solution to bring is to have a two-state solution, and that the settlers should go back to Israel, should not be allowed to continue in a way. That is something quite significant when we hear something like that. So I think it's important to try to keep in mind what the importance of what's going on, not only on the ground over there, and how what's going on the ground over in Gaza or in the West Bank and in other parts of the region is influencing also American policy and the views of American citizens, regardless of their background. We're seeing young people. It's amazing what we have seen, how young people, students, we saw them in Chicago, actually. There were high school students who demonstrated and took a day off from school to protest about what's going on in Gaza, to try to put pressure even on the city council. All of this is, I think, part of the changes that are taking place. And this is where it's very important for Arab Americans and Muslim Americans to make their voices heard. I think we are beginning to see that. And that is something very significant. But part of it also, there's a need to have for the Palestinian leaders in the West Bank, in Gaza, to try to bury the hatch and their differences and try to work together to try to do the best for their own people and to try to gain the support of the international community, and which is already taking place. We've seen the position of South Africa, Bolivia, many countries in the world that are far away from the Arab world and taking positions even stronger than some of the Arab countries have taken. And this is something that I think is important, that we have to emphasize, and we have to also, the participation of the Arab American community is essential and very important, so that they become full-fledged American citizens who have the same rights and obligations as other American citizens.
Ray, tell us a little more about the resolution taken by the City Council in Chicago, and also you may want to respond to Edmund's comment about what you said regarding the Holocaust.
Well, no, I agree with Edmund about the Holocaust. I was making the point that we don't need to compare what's happening to other things to make it look more grievous, because injecting the Holocaust only plays into the hands of the people that we're debating. They use that against us. So I'm in favor of, we shouldn't even bring that issue into the discussion. And that's not to criticize Edmund or even any of the other well-meaning Arab activists. I'm just saying that what's happening in Gaza is so tragic, so horrendous, the worst we've seen ever. And it's been pretty bad, that on its face, just the basics that we convey are horrific and demand human rights, and they're not getting it. In Chicago, there has been a battle, a typical battle, and Edmund mentioned correctly that there are these huge protests around the country. The problem with the protests is that a protest is supposed to win the hearts and minds of the public, not just to demonstrate strength. I think the protests have demonstrated strength. We have huge protests in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, across this country. The problem with the protests is they're poorly organized. Their goals are not, we have to be strategic, and we're being more emotional. That's the way Arabs are. Emotion is not strategy. Emotion is not politics. Emotion is the Achilles heel of success. So they organize protests that block expressways. They organize protests that block streets. They organize protests that have shut down industrial areas in some cities. All we're doing is angering everyday Americans who, believe me, they have more than enough to worry about besides what we Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims have to face. So I would be more strategic about our protests and show the world that we're doing it in a strength, that we have a lot of coalition support among Blacks, Hispanics, progressives, and not just progressive Democrats, centrist Democrats who believe that this is wrong, but we still don't have enough to make a difference. The Chicago City Council is a good example. A resolution was introduced 6 weeks ago to demand a ceasefire. It was blocked by one alderman out of 50 aldermen who happens to be Jewish, Deborah Silverstein, who imposed their own personal interests above the interests of human rights and justice. She managed to get it blocked, saying that a ceasefire is wrong. How anybody could oppose a ceasefire it's unheard of that opposing a ceasefire now is the right thing to do. It's terrible to oppose a ceasefire, especially when civilians are being killed. So instead of passing the resolution last week, they approved the resolution on the Holocaust, the 79th anniversary, and said that they didn't want to pass the ceasefire. Well, this week, after the mayor last week said it was wrong, Mayor Brandon Johnson, he's African-American, he said it's wrong not to call for a ceasefire. They reintroduced the resolution. 23 aldermen voted against it, including aldermen whose wards include some of the strongest and largest concentrations of Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims in the city of Chicago. And 23 aldermen supported the ceasefire resolution because it included a provision which I think was fair, calling for the immediate release and unconditional release of all the hostages. So Mayor Johnson had to step in and cast the tie-breaking vote. It was 23-23. He cast the vote, it passed, and immediately our governor, J.B. Pritzker, who comes from one of the most influential Jewish American families in the country, very wealthy, very strong, very involved deeply in American politics, made a statement that it was outrageous to pass the ceasefire resolution because he said it made no reference to Israeli women who were being raped on October 7th. They are using October 7th. They've weaponized it. We don't know what the truth is of October 7th. We do know some 1,200 Israelis were killed, but the Israelis strategically took that event and turned it into one of the most horrific events that they could possibly convey, saying horrible things to try and silence anybody who would question what Israel is doing. We're in a box. And I think that we need to get our act together. There's some great achievements. That resolution in Chicago shows that despite all the disadvantages, the third largest city in America can pass a resolution calling for a ceasefire. To me, it's amazing that only some people support a ceasefire after 4 months of massacres and killings. We're up against the wall. And we need to do a better job. We've done some good, but we're not doing a good enough job. We need to be more strategic. We need to be smarter. We need to be less emotional. And we need to be focused on what our goals are.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I will ask Dr. Ghareeb, is the sanction imposed on 4 Israeli settlers enough? Is it enough? After the break.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most. And make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
If the weather gets colder, it's a good idea to layer up with scarves, hats, and mittens. Another layer of protection this season is to get your flu and COVID-19 vaccines. You can get both vaccines at the same time. Talk to your healthcare provider or learn more at michigan.gov/COVID-flu-RSV and layer up for some added peace of mind. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
On America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the cracks in the U.S.-Israel relationship after the Gaza War. And Dr. Ghareeb, Mr. Biden, perhaps for the first time, is imposing sanctions on violent settlers, 4 of them in Israel, in the West Bank. Is that enough?
Of course, it's not enough, but at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that this is a step in the right direction. The settlers have been attacking Palestinians in the West Bank. They have been driving them, many of them, from their homes. About 100 children have died, by the way, in the West Bank, partly by some have been killed by settlers, some have been killed by the Israeli military in a number of places. And I think it's that when the White House has taken, in a way, a good step. I think part of it may be political, again, because of what's going on in the U.S. I mean, President Biden and some of his advisors are beginning to realize that they're losing the support of significant communities, important, and I'm not just talking about the Arabs and Arab Americans in Michigan or in a couple of other places, but what's happening in other parts of the United States. And this is where the role of African Americans and, of course, the Arab American community is important in Michigan. And this is one of the swing states. And that's why the president's going there. And so that he wants to make sure that to make some amends, perhaps. But at the same time, I think there's growing recognition on the part of some officials within the administration that the policies that the U.S. has been pursuing have not helped. And we're seeing this also from diplomats in the State Department. We're seeing it from diplomats who have sent, messages to Washington warning that Russia and China are going to gain from the policies pursued by the United States, and that the U.S. is losing support, and not only in the Middle East, but in other parts of the world. So I think this recognition also of the violence that took place. There was Arab, Palestinian American young man who was recently killed also. All of this, I think, it may have contributed to what we are seeing and to the decision that was taken, the executive order that basically allowed sanctions on violent settlers who are running amok in the West Bank. But we saw the reaction also from Netanyahu. Netanyahu said that Israel acts against lawbreakers everywhere, and there's no room to exceptional measures in this regard. I mean, we haven't seen any acts, Israeli acts, actually punishing the Palestinians, those who killed Palestinians. We've seen mass graves recently, and this may have contributed to the decision that was taken by the International Court of Justice. Skeletons have been found, a mass grave where people were tied with their hands were tied behind their back, and their eyes were also they put something on their eyes basically and they were shot and buried in a mass grave. Families are trying to determine who they were, and these were civilians. They were not fighters, as far as is known. So I think also the concern is what has been going on is that some of the settlers have been going to the homes of Palestinians in the West Bank and distributing leaflets. You better go to Jordan and take your effects and leave, otherwise you'll die. I mean, these types of things are not something that should be taken so easily or not dismissed, because we don't see sufficient coverage in the media about these issues, but we're beginning to see some of that, and that is significant, and that may have also influenced the decisions. But the reality is that there is a need to stop the killing that's going on, to stop what's going on in Gaza, and put pressure on Israel. And if there is a country that can do it, it's the United States. They can because they provide Israel with more support, financial, political, diplomatic, providing the military equipment that Israel is using, including those bombs. So I think the U.S. could do more, and President Biden and his administration, I think it's time to do much more and try to bring an end to this horrible, horrible war that's taking place.
Edmund Ghareeb, thank you very much for your contribution. My thanks also go to Ray Hanania, and I will see you again next time, the first Friday of next month. Have a good weekend.